The medical bay of the Galactic Council flagship Serapis was silent when they brought him in. The alien medics, tall and feathered with glass-like skin that shimmered under ultraviolet light, whispered among themselves as the human's body was laid on the cold crystalline slab. The readings were impossible. Every major bone in his body showed fractures, several organs were ruptured, and his blood pressure was far beyond survivable limits for any known species. The scanners flashed red, alarms echoing softly in the sterile air. To them, he was already dead. But the human's chest rose, slowly, defiantly. His eyes opened, dull blue fire glowing behind cracked lids. The chief physician, a veterinary surgeon with 6 trembling hands, leaned closer and asked through a translator, "Human soldier? Can you hear me?" The man gave a faint smile through bloodied teeth. His voice barely a whisper but steady enough to echo through the chamber. "Yeah," he rasped. "That all you got?" The medics froze. Even machines seemed to pause, as if the ship itself couldn't comprehend the words. It was the moment every alien in that room understood why the galaxy feared humanity. Not for their strength, but for what refused to die inside them. Hours earlier, before the human was dragged in half-dead, the galaxy had been burning. A dozen worlds had fallen to the Keth Dominion, a race of cold-blooded conquerors who treated war like art. They crushed fleets, vaporized colonies, and broke civilizations with surgical precision. The Galactic Council, an alliance of 37 species, was losing. Then came Earth's involvement. The humans, the newcomers of the galaxy, were sent as auxiliary troops, unimportant, expendable. But what no one expected was how they fought. They didn't retreat when outnumbered, didn't surrender when surrounded. They fought with a kind of madness that the Keth could neither predict nor understand. The man now lying in the medbay was Commander Aaron Kane of the Terran Expeditionary Corps. His last mission had been a suicide run to hold a communication post long enough for the Council fleets to retreat. By all logic, he shouldn't have survived. But humanity had never followed logic. The aliens who watched over him didn't know what to do. They'd seen warriors, soldiers, and heroes, but none who laughed while broken. The veterinary medic turned to the others. "He should be in shock," he said. "Pain this severe would kill any rational being." The assistant, a small, jelly-skinned Frickson, replied in awe, "Maybe he isn't rational. Maybe that's what makes them terrifying." In his delirium, Aaron muttered softly, unaware of the dozens of eyes studying him. "Still standing," he whispered. The queen of the veterinary fleet herself arrived hours later, a being of luminescent grace and cold intellect. She looked at the human and saw the same strange beauty her species feared, fragile flesh defying physics. "How long has he been conscious?" she asked. 3 hours, the medic replied. "We gave him sedatives, but they did nothing." She stepped forward and, for reasons she couldn't explain, asked, "Human, why do you keep fighting?" He lifted his head slightly, blood running down his face, and said, "Because it's what we do. We fall, we break, we rise again." Word of the human spread across the Council fleet. Some called him a monster, others a miracle. The Keth intercepted the transmission of his survival and responded with fury. "No one survives the Dominion's blades," their high commander hissed. "If he lives, we will finish what we started." The Galactic Council ordered him evacuated, but Aaron refused. Lying half-paralyzed, he sent one last message to his units scattered across the stars. "Hold the line. Don't give them a single inch. If you can still move, you're not done." The message spread like wildfire, not just through human channels but across alien networks. Species that had once mocked humanity now listened to that broken voice with reverence. The soldiers of a dozen worlds took up his words as a rallying cry. And when the Keth returned, expecting silence, they found resistance waiting, a fleet that refused to yield. Meanwhile, inside the medbay, Aaron's condition worsened. The machines warned his heart was failing, yet he wouldn't let go. He looked up at the terrified aliens around him and said, "If I die, don't waste your tears. Just tell them we're coming." Then, something extraordinary happened. His body began to stabilize, not because of medicine but because of sheer will. The Vekari scanners showed impossible readings. His pain receptors had gone dormant, his heart output doubled. His body was consuming itself to stay alive, adapting faster than they could record. "He's rewriting his limits," one medic whispered. "He's not supposed to exist." To them, humanity was a paradox, soft bodies with indestructible spirits. They began to call it the iron will phenomenon. The Queen ordered every record sealed. "No one must know," she said, "or the galaxy will never sleep again." But the humans already knew. They didn't need proof, they lived it every day. Days later, when he finally stood again, his body covered in synthetic braces, he walked into the council chamber uninvited. The delegates fell silent. Even the Keth ambassador, who had come to demand humanity's surrender, stopped speaking. Aaron's voice, rough but steady, filled the hall. "You wanted to see what a human looks like after defeat," he said. "Now you have. And this?" He slammed his fist into his brace, cracking it in half. "Is what comes after." The sound echoed through the chamber like thunder. "You think pain will stop us? You think fear will bend us? You don't understand. Pain is where we start." His words were broadcast to every ship, every soldier, every terrified civilian hiding under alien suns. And as his speech reached the edges of the galaxy, something shifted. The Keth assault halted. Entire fleets hesitated. The idea of humanity spread faster than their weapons could destroy it. When the war finally ended, the Galactic Council sent envoys to negotiate peace. The Keth withdrew, not because they were defeated, but because they couldn't comprehend an enemy that didn't die properly. Commander Aaron Kane was awarded the highest honor of both human and alien alliances, though he never saw himself as a hero. When asked by the Galactic Council what drove humanity to such extremes, he simply said, "We've been breaking and healing since the dawn of time. It's not bravery, it's memory." The Queen of the Vekari looked at him and whispered, "Perhaps humanity isn't the youngest race in the stars. Perhaps you are the oldest souls." Years later, deep in the archives of the Galactic Academy, young cadets studied the records of the Terran Wars. In one hollow record, they watched the human lying broken on the table, laughing when he should have died. The instructor, a solemn alien elder, turned to the class and said, "That laugh changed history. Never forget it." And somewhere, far beyond the edge of known space, a Terran scout whispered the same old words before heading into another impossible mission. If you can still move, you're not done. Thank you for watching this HFY Sci-Fi story. If you enjoyed the tale of humanity's courage and defiance in the face of the impossible, please like, comment, and subscribe for more cinematic stories of strength, compassion, and the spirit that makes us human among the stars. When the first reports spread of what had happened in the medical bay, disbelief rippled through the fleets of the Galactic Council. The image of a human soldier, shattered and bleeding, laughing through agony, reached the outer colonies within hours. Commanders paused mid-sentence. Generals turned off their comm screens in silence. To most of the galaxy's species, pain was an enemy, something to be feared, managed, avoided. But for humanity, pain had become a companion, a teacher, even a kind of proof that they were still alive. The aliens watching the broadcast didn't understand it. They couldn't. For them, pain meant surrender. For humans, it meant keep going. The Council sent immediate orders to have the humans sedated, studied, contained if necessary. Yet every medic who approached him said the same thing. He doesn't need sedation. He needs purpose. Commander Aaron Kane, though half-conscious, still demanded status reports. His voice was weak but carried the authority of a man who had spent his life walking through fire. "How's the line?" he rasped to the nearest medic. "How many made it out?" The Vekari physician hesitated. "Over half thanks to your signal. But the Keth are regrouping. The Council will not fight another day." Kane smiled faintly. "Then tell them to stop asking for mercy. Start earning it." Even broken, his words carried weight. The Queen of the Vekari, who had once despised human recklessness, found herself listening to the transmissions of his unit. Men and women who refused to retreat, who sang as they marched into hopeless battles. In their songs, she heard something her kind had forgotten centuries ago: hope. On the third day, the council summoned her to a private chamber aboard their flagship. The room was filled with tension, its walls lined with glowing sigils representing each species. The Keth envoy was there too, his armor shimmering like a predator's skin. "This human," the envoy hissed, "is a danger to stability. His defiance spreads like disease. Execute him before he infects the rest." The queen turned her crystalline eyes toward him and said calmly, "You call courage a disease. That is why your empire will fall." The Keth slammed his clawed hand against the table. "He is broken." The queen's voice cut through the room like lightning. "And yet he stands." The chamber fell silent. The human was no longer just a soldier, he was becoming an idea. Meanwhile, on the Terran vessel Aurora, Kane's second-in-command, Lieutenant Mira Hayes, intercepted council transmissions detailing their plan to transfer Aaron to an isolation facility for further study. She knew what that meant: containment, dissection, erasure. Humanity had been warned before. Never let them take your heroes alive. Without waiting for orders, she led a small squad to infiltrate the council flagship. They disguised themselves as medical technicians, slipped through corridors shimmering with alien light, and reached the medbay where Aaron was kept. The guards recognized them too late. In the chaos, alarms blared, and Mira lifted the human from the table. "We're getting you home, Commander," she said, her eyes wet but fierce. "You've done enough bleeding for them." He looked at her, groggy but smirking. "Home? Mira, there's no home left, just more to save." The queen appeared as they reached the hangar. Her guards raised their weapons, but she lifted a hand, silencing them. "Go," she said simply. "Take him." Mira froze, stunned. "Why are you helping us?" The queen's expression was unreadable. "Because I have seen the truth of your species. The galaxy needs that madness more than I feared it." As the human shuttle lifted off, she turned to her guards and whispered, "Let them go. What comes next will change us all." Back aboard the Aurora, Aaron awoke to the familiar hum of Terran engines. The air was heavier here, filled with the scent of oil and metal rather than sterile crystal. Mira sat beside his bed, arms crossed. "You just couldn't die quietly, could you?" she muttered. He chuckled, the sound raw but alive. "Wasn't in the mission briefing." She frowned but smiled anyway. "You've started something, you know. The aliens are scared, but not of our weapons, they're scared of what we are." He turned his head slightly. "And what's that?" "Unbreakable," she said softly. The next few days were chaos. The council fractured. Some species demanded humanity be banned from all future alliances. Others begged for Terran instructors to train their soldiers. The Queen sent encrypted messages to Earth, offering open cooperation. And on the war front, the Keth hesitated for the first time in their empire's history. Their soldiers spoke of nightmares, visions of humans who laughed through broken bones, who rose after being torn apart. The legend of Aaron Kane had grown faster than any fleet could fly. Even the Keth's most hardened warriors began to whisper his name like a curse and a prayer. But the legend was not finished. When Kane recovered enough to stand, he refused rest. He returned to the bridge, his body a map of scars and braces, his uniform hanging loose. "Patch me through to the fleet," he ordered. "They need to see." The hologram of his face appeared across dozens of ships, human and alien alike. "You've all heard the stories," he began, his voice carrying over the hum of engines and hearts. "I'm not made of steel. I'm just human. That means I break easy. But I heal harder." He paused, eyes narrowing. "They think pain stops us. It doesn't. It reminds us why we fight. Because pain means we're still alive. And as long as one of us breathes, humanity stands." Across the fleet, soldiers roared. The broadcast reached even the Queen's ship. She watched in silence, one hand resting over her heart. Her advisor whispered, "He's not just speaking to them. He's speaking to everyone." She nodded. "Yes," she said quietly. "And soon, the galaxy will listen." But even as his message spread, shadows moved in the dark corners of power. The Keth were preparing something designed not to kill humanity, but to erase their spirit entirely. Their plan would strike not with weapons, but with truth twisted into poison. They would show the galaxy what happens when courage becomes defiance, when mercy becomes madness. They would use the human legend against itself. Elias didn't know it yet, but the greatest battle of his life wasn't for his survival, it was for humanity's soul. The galaxy no longer slept. After the broadcast of Aaron Kane's words, "Pain means we're still alive," something inside the endless void had changed. Across colonies, both human and alien, those words were repeated in the streets, whispered in the barracks, carved into walls, and written onto the hulls of starships preparing for one more stand. For the first time in centuries, the Galactic Council had witnessed something they could not legislate or contain: belief. Humanity's defiance had spread like wildfire, and no law, no fleet, no emperor could extinguish it. But in the darkness between stars, the Keth Dominion watched in silence. They had crushed empires before, erased cultures from history, but they had never faced a species that grew stronger through pain. To them, humanity was a paradox, an infection that made the weak fearless and the strong restless. The Keth did not plan to fight humanity with weapons anymore. This time, they would attack the one thing that made humans invincible: their soul. The Keth High Command met in the shadowed chambers of their flagship, Vorkal. It was a vast, obsidian citadel that drifted through the void like a fragment of darkness itself. Their leader, Archon Zarvel, towered above the others, his body covered in scars that glowed faintly red under the cold light. "They do not break," he growled, his voice like grinding metal. "So we will make them choose." His lieutenants bowed, uncertain. "Choose what, my lord?" Zarvel turned toward the hologram projecting Aaron Kane's defiant face. "Between their heart and their survival. Between who they are and what they can become." He raised a clawed hand, and the hollow shifted, showing a shimmering planet covered in blue-green forests. "Earth," he said. "They think it is their strength. But all strength can rot from the inside." The Keth plan was simple and cruel. Sow division among the Terrans, make their allies doubt them, and break their unity with truth sharpened into a blade. On the Terran flagship Aurora, Aaron Kane stood before a window of reinforced glass, watching the faint shimmer of Earthlight thousands of kilometers below. He had returned home for the first time since the war began, but home felt distant. Cities were rebuilt, but the people had changed. Streets were filled with murals of him, some painted with halos, others with weapons. He hated it. "They're turning me into something I'm not," he said quietly to Lieutenant Mira Hayes, who stood beside him. She gave him a look both sharp and weary. "You didn't ask for it, Commander. But people need hope. And right now, you're all they have." He turned to her, his jaw tightening. "Hope's dangerous. It can blind them." Mira smiled faintly. "So can fear. You taught us that too." But as peace talks began between the Council and the remnants of the Keth, something strange started happening. Keth transmissions, encrypted, coded, nearly impossible to detect, began leaking into public channels. They contained edited footage from the battlefield. Humans laughing in the ruins, soldiers setting explosives near fallen alien civilians, corpses burned beyond recognition with captions that read, "Mercy? This is humanity." At first, people dismissed it as propaganda. Then the leaks grew more frequent. Council delegates began to question whether humans were saviors or monsters wearing friendly faces. The Queen of the Vekari summoned Aaron privately to her chamber aboard her flagship Elysian. She stood in silence for a long time before speaking. "They are poisoning the stars with lies," she said softly. "And I fear some are beginning to believe them." Aaron's expression hardened. "Then we show them the truth." The Queen shook her head. "Truth alone is not enough. Perception shapes worlds. They no longer fear you, Aaron, they doubt you. And doubt is slower than death but twice as deadly." He paced the floor, muscles tense beneath the exosuit that still supported his healing bones. "Let them doubt. We'll remind them who we are." The Queen's eyes glowed faintly. "Be careful, human. Every time your kind proves its courage, you also prove its madness." Her warning came too late. 2 weeks later, the Keth made their move. A Terran colony on the edge of Council space, Nova Persei, went dark. Millions of civilians, human and alien, disappeared. When rescue ships arrived, they found something far worse than destruction. The colony was intact. The people were alive. But every broadcast, every recording, showed the same horrifying image. Human soldiers, bearing Earth's insignia, executing alien civilians and declaring the return of human supremacy. It was an illusion, of course, synthetic projections created by Keth neural engineers, but it didn't matter. The footage spread faster than it could be disproved. Panic exploded through the Council. Species that had once stood beside humanity began to withdraw their fleets, claiming they could not ally with butchers of peace. Inside the command chamber of Aurora, chaos reigned. "We're losing everything," Mira said, slamming her hand against the console. "Our allies, our credibility, hell, even our own colonies are demanding isolation." Aaron stood at the center, silent, thinking. "They're not attacking our bodies," he said slowly. "They're attacking our story." The room fell silent. He turned toward the comms officer. "Patch me through to the entire council." "Sir, they've restricted human access to—" "Do it," he said, and his tone made it clear there was no argument. Moments later, every major council broadcast went dark, replaced by a single image: Aaron Kane, standing in his worn uniform, the scars on his face catching the light. His voice carried across the stars, calm but edged with the weight of a storm. "You've seen the lies. You've heard the rumors. You think humanity turned savage again. Maybe you're right about one thing: we are savage. But not in the way you think. When we fight, it's not to conquer. When we burn, it's to light the dark. When we bleed, it's to protect those who can't. You think we killed for peace? No, we died for it." His voice rose, rough and resonant. "Look at your history. Every empire you built was soaked in the blood of others. Humanity learned too late what mercy costs, but we learned. And if you doubt that, then come see Earth. Come see what we rebuilt from ashes." The broadcast spread like wildfire again. But this time, the council didn't shut it down. The Queen herself overrode their blockades. And slowly, piece by piece, the illusion of lies began to fracture. Independent scouts proved that the Nova Persei executions were impossible. The soldiers shown didn't exist, their serial codes fabricated. The Keth were exposed, but not defeated. They wanted more than destruction now, they wanted revenge. Archon Zarvel sent one final message to Aaron Kane, transmitted across secure frequencies. "You cannot kill a shadow," it said, "and I will be yours until the stars die." That night, aboard the Aurora, Aaron sat alone in the observation deck. The stars seemed closer now, whispering secrets only broken men could hear. Mira joined him quietly. "You saved them again," she said softly. "For now." He didn't look at her. "Peace doesn't last. Not for us." She smiled faintly. "Maybe not, but it lasts long enough to remind the galaxy who we are." He turned his gaze toward Earth, blue and glowing against the black. "Who we are," he repeated. "Yeah, that's what they'll never understand." Far beyond, on the Keth flagship Vorkal, Archon Zarvel watched the human broadcast in silence. His advisors trembled, awaiting his order for retaliation. Instead, the Archon simply leaned forward, his crimson eyes narrowing. "He doesn't understand yet," he murmured. "It's not his body I want to break. It's his faith." He turned toward the void where Earth's light shimmered faintly. "Let them have their peace. For now." The war for humanity's survival was no longer fought with ships or soldiers. It was fought with stories. And the most dangerous story in the galaxy was the truth about what humans became when everything else was taken from them. The illusion of peace held for 93 days. 93 days of calm skies, silent borders, and cautious smiles shared across species that still watched each other through glass walls of distrust. The Galactic Council declared it the dawn of a new era, though even they could taste the bitterness of their words. Humanity was rebuilding, spreading across the void again, repairing broken colonies, reopening trade, sending scientists instead of soldiers. But deep beneath the calm, The Keth Dominion moved like smoke through cracks no one could see. Their fleets stayed hidden, their signals cold, their claws sinking quietly into Earth's networks and outposts. They didn't need to invade. They had learned from their mistakes. This time they would corrupt, not conquer. They would make humanity destroy itself from within. It started with whispers. Small, strange glitches in Earth's AI systems, military programs rewriting orders without command, colonies losing contact for minutes at a time, ghost transmissions from old Terran warships thought to be decommissioned. The Council dismissed them as technical failures, but the Terran fleet knew better. Aaron Kane knew better. He had felt the rhythm of the Keth's deception before. It pulsed through chaos like a hidden heartbeat. Sitting in the dim command deck of the Aurora, he stared at the data feed scrolling across the holographic display. His right hand still bore a faint tremor, a scar from the last war. "They're already here," he muttered. "They never left." Mira Hayes stood beside him, watching the same feed. "You think it's them again?" He gave a small nod. "No one else hides in the dark that long unless they're planning to strike from it." The Keth didn't launch ships this time, they sent voices. Across human channels, broadcasts appeared, claiming to be from survivors of the old war who had seen the truth. They accused the Council of manipulating humanity, said that peace was a lie forged to keep Earth obedient. Some even used Aaron Kane's own speeches, twisted, remixed, and poisoned. "Pain means we're still alive," one broadcast said. "But only slaves feel pain." The words spread fast. Colonies began questioning Earth's leadership. Civil unrest rose on Mars and Titan, and whispers of rebellion spread through human space like cracks across glass. Kane was summoned before the Terran High Council to answer for the chaos. He stood in the great silver chamber on Earth, a circle of cold faces surrounding him. "You gave them words, Commander," one official hissed. "Now they use them as fire." Aaron looked around, exhausted but defiant. Words aren't weapons until someone turns them into lies. And lies spread because we stopped telling the truth. After the hearing, he walked through the quiet streets of New Geneva, the rebuilt capital. The city gleamed like a wound healed too fast, perfect on the surface, fragile underneath. As he passed a crowd gathered around a holoscreen, he saw his own face again, replaying the same speech that had once united the galaxy. But this time, it was edited. His smile distorted, his words twisted to sound like a call for war. The crowd murmured, uneasy. Some looked at him with admiration, others with fear. "You see what they're doing," he said softly to Mira, who stood beside him. "They're rewriting what I am until I'm their weapon." She frowned. "Then we'll make sure they don't finish the story." That night, the first Keth infiltration team landed on Earth. They weren't soldiers in the traditional sense, they were bioengineered phantoms, beings who could shift their form to mimic humans. They infiltrated military bases, government centers, even hospitals. Their purpose was simple: create chaos so perfect it looked like coincidence. And soon, Earth began tearing itself apart. Explosions in orbit blamed on human radicals. Assassinations disguised as protests. The Council grew terrified and demanded martial law on Terran soil. But the Queen of the Vekari disagreed. She sent a private message to Kane, encrypted with her personal seal. "The shadow you fight is not outside your world. It is inside your reflection. Trust your instincts, not their orders." Kane knew what she meant. The only way to defeat the Keth wasn't through fleets or politics. It was through truth. But truth had become a battlefield of its own. He called a secret meeting of his old squad, the same soldiers who had followed him through fire in the First War. They gathered in an abandoned hangar under Earth's surface, their faces hardened by loss. "We're being hunted by our own ghosts," he told them. "The Keth learned to wear our skin. They're not invading, they're replacing." One of the veterans, a scarred engineer named Dalton, slammed his fist on the table. "So what do? We can't tell who's real anymore." Kane looked around, his voice low but steady. "Then we remind them what real feels like. We bleed. We suffer. We fight where they can't follow, inside the heart." The plan was desperate but brilliant. Kane's team would expose the Keth infiltration by broadcasting live evidence of their deception. proof that the Council, the fleet, and even Earth citizens could see for themselves. But to do that, they needed to enter the Central Orbital Relay Echelon 1. It was heavily fortified, controlled by both Terran and Council security. If they were caught, it would mean treason. Still, humanity's survival had always walked that line. As they launched in their small stealth vessel, the black of space swallowed them whole. Mira piloted the ship, her hands steady even as alarms whispered warnings. "You know this is insane," she said. Kane smiled faintly. "Good. That means it's human." They reached the relay undetected, their vessel docking in the shadow of its massive antennas. Inside, they found corridors crawling with guards, some human, some alien. But as they advanced deeper, they began noticing strange inconsistencies. Guards repeating the same phrases, eyes glowing faintly in the dark, movements just a fraction too perfect. "They're here," Kane whispered. "They've taken the relay." His team moved fast, disabling terminals and pulling data from the main core. Then the alarm sounded. The walls seemed to hum, and suddenly the station came alive with shadows. Keth infiltrators shedding their human forms, their bodies elongating into metallic, spine-covered horrors. The firefight that followed was chaos incarnate. Plasma bolts cut through smoke, the sound of screaming metal echoing through the halls. Kane was hit twice but didn't stop. "Get the transmission up," he shouted. Myra's voice came through static. "We're online, Commander. You're live to the galaxy." Aaron turned toward the nearest camera, his face bloodied, his armor cracked. Behind him, the battle still raged. "You wanted to see the truth?" he shouted. "Here it is. The enemy doesn't wear a flag. They wear our faces. Look at them. Remember them." He grabbed one of the fallen Keth, its disguise half melted, revealing a hybrid form of human and alien tissue. "They thought they could make us doubt ourselves. They thought pain would make us forget who we are. But humanity doesn't break under pain. We become it." The transmission went viral within minutes. Billions watched as the truth unfolded live. The Keth infiltration was exposed, their shadow war collapsing in on itself. On their flagship, Archon Zarvel roared in fury as reports flooded in of their agents being hunted down across colonies. "End it," he commanded. "Burn Earth to ash." But the Keth fleets were already too late. The Council, now united under the Queen's order, declared open defense of humanity. Armies that had once stood apart now fought side by side, their fleets converging around Earth in a halo of light and fire. As Kane's team evacuated the crumbling station, the Earth rose in the distance, a blue beacon surrounded by the glow of Allied ships. "You did it," Mira whispered, guiding the ship through debris. He looked out the window, exhausted but smiling. "No," he said quietly. "We did. All of us." Then, as their ship disappeared into the atmosphere below, a single message echoed through every channel in the galaxy, spoken in a dozen languages, human and alien alike. "They can break our bones. They can burn our worlds. But they will never touch the one thing they fear most, our heart." And somewhere in the darkness beyond the stars, even the Archon, for the first time, felt something unfamiliar, doubt. The counterattack began not with guns, but with silence, the kind of silence that only comes before the sky tears open. For days, the galaxy had watched the transmissions of Earth's defiance, the images of Aaron Kane's battered team exposing the Keth deception to billions. Every corner of known space buzzed with a single realization. Humanity had once again done the impossible. Fleets that had been sworn enemies now turned their ships toward a single point in the cosmos, the dark region where the Keth Dominion's fortress world burned like a wound in space. They didn't march under flags or orders. They moved under something stronger, the memory of a laugh. The same laugh the medics had heard when every bone in a human's body was broken. The same laugh that meant pain could not win. The Galactic Alliance formed overnight. Ships from 50 species gathered in orbit around Earth, their hulls shimmering with blue light, their weapons silent but ready. The Queen of the Vekari stood on her bridge, her voice calm and resonant. "This is not humanity's war alone," she said to her commanders. "It is every world's fight for the right to survive its own mistakes." Her fleet's massive crystal wings expanded, catching starlight as they aligned beside Terran warships for the first time in history. On the bridge of the Aurora, Aaron Kane watched the formation unfold, his reflection faint against the glass. "It's not just ships," he murmured. "It's belief." Mira Hayes stood behind him, her uniform torn and armor scarred from the battle at Echelon 1. "Belief doesn't stop plasma rounds," she said, though there was a small smile tugging at her lips. "No," Aaron replied softly, "but it makes sure someone's still standing after they hit." Then, the silence shattered. A ripple of energy tore through the void, followed by hundreds of red signatures blooming on sensors. The Keth fleet had arrived. Their ships moved like predators, vast constructs of bone and steel, dripping with energy that twisted the space around them. At the center of their formation loomed the Vorkal, Archon Zarvel's flagship, larger than a city, its surface alive with pulsing veins of crimson light. "They're broadcasting," the comm officer said. The main display flickered, and the Archon's image filled the bridge. Tall, skeletal, eyes burning with cold fire. "You think this is victory?" he hissed. "This is your extinction. Your pain will feed our resurrection." Aaron didn't flinch. "You don't understand pain," he said evenly. "You use it as a weapon. We use it as a promise." The Archon sneered. "Then come keep it." The order came from Earth's command, but Aaron didn't wait. The Alliance moved as one. Fleets jumped from orbit, space warping around them in luminous rings. In seconds, the black became alive with motion, thousands of vessels weaving through light and death. The battle that followed would later be recorded in Council history as the firestorm at Helios Reach. It wasn't elegant. It wasn't precise. It was chaos, glorious human chaos. Terran ships dove through enemy lines, trading armor for momentum. Valkyrie cruisers formed energy shields to absorb the Keth's plasma storms. The skies bloomed with explosions so bright they were visible from a dozen systems away. Through it all, Aaron's voice cut through the comms like a blade. "Keep pushing. Don't think, move. They can't kill what keeps getting back up." Inside the Aurora, alarms screamed, panels sparked, and the air tasted of smoke and metal. "Hull integrity down to 20%. Mira shouted. "We can't take another hit like that." Aaron grinned through blood on his teeth. "Then let's make sure they can't either." He ordered the ship forward, straight toward the heart of the Keth formation. The crew hesitated, knowing it was suicide. "Sir," the navigator said shakily, "we won't survive the blast radius." Aaron looked over his shoulder, his eyes sharp as ice. "That's the point. They need to see we don't stop just because it hurts." He turned back to the viewport. "Set course for the Vorkal. We're going to knock on the Archon's door." The Aurora broke through the storm, its engines screaming against gravity wells and magnetic waves. The Keth ships swarmed like sharks, but the Alliance covered her flank, sacrificing their own to keep the path open. "We're through," Mira shouted as the enemy flagship came into view, a monstrous silhouette blotting out the stars. Aaron's breath caught. "That's it," he whispered. "That's where it ends." The Aurora's guns lit up, every barrel unleashing fire. But the Archon's vessel barely flinched. Energy shields flared, absorbing the assault like rain on stone. Then came the counterstrike. A beam of crimson energy sliced through the void, hitting the Aurora dead-on. The ship shook violently, hull plates ripping away, crew thrown from their stations. Aaron slammed into the floor, blood flooding his mouth. He crawled back to the console. "Status. Engines offline," Mira yelled. "We've lost everything." Aaron's gaze hardened. "Then we finish this by hand." He activated the emergency override, locking the ship on a collision course with the Vorkal. The crew stared at him wide-eyed. "Sir," he interrupted, voice calm. "You can stay or you can live. But I'm going through." Myra's voice cracked. "You can't do this alone." He met her eyes, and there was a flicker of something softer beneath the fire. "I never do." She clenched her fists, then gave a fierce nod. "Then let's make history." The Aurora's engines reignited, burning blue-white as the ship hurled itself forward like a spear of light. Alarms blared. The Archon's voice echoed over comms. "You'll die screaming, human." Aaron smiled faintly. "We always do." The impact was cataclysmic. The Aurora slammed into the Keth flagship, tearing through its hull and embedding deep within its core. Fires erupted across both ships, debris spinning into the void. The shockwave rippled across the battlefield, freezing combatants on both sides. In the chaos, Aaron and Mira led a small boarding team through the wreckage, armed only with rifles and willpower. The corridors of the Vorkal pulsed like veins, organic metal shifting beneath their feet. They fought through wave after wave of Keth warriors, each one faster, stronger, but never more determined. "He's close," Aaron said, panting, his body aching with every step. "I can feel him." They reached the central chamber, a vast cathedral of bone and light. At its center stood Archon Zarvel, his form colossal, his eyes burning with fury. "You should have died when your world burned," he snarled. "You think mercy makes you strong?" Aaron raised his weapon but didn't fire. "No," he said quietly. "Mercy makes us human." The Archon lunged, his claws slashing through air, but Aaron dodged, rolling beneath him, firing point-blank into the creature's chest. The Archon roared, swinging his arm and hurling Aaron across the chamber. He crashed into the wall, bones cracking. "You can't win," Zarvel growled, towering over him. Aaron coughed blood, laughing weakly. "You still don't get it, winning's not the point." He triggered the detonator strapped to his armor, the core of the Aurora rigged to overload. Mira screamed his name as the chamber filled with blinding light. The explosion tore through the flagship, vaporizing the Archon and sending shockwaves that shattered the Keth formation. The battle ended in a single, burning instant. When the light faded, the Keth were gone, their fleets reduced to drifting husks. The Alliance ships held formation in stunned silence, their sensors filled with static. Then the Queen's voice broke through, soft and trembling. "It's over," she whispered. "He did it." Across the galaxy, celebrations erupted. Planets rang with cheers and tears as people realized humanity had done what no empire ever could. They ended the war not by domination, but by defiance. Mira survived, barely. She was pulled from the wreckage by rescue teams, her armor melted, her body broken. When she awoke in a Vekari medical chamber, the Queen herself was there. "He's gone," Mira said weakly. The Queen shook her head. "No," she said softly. "He's everywhere." She turned toward the window, where Earth glowed like a heartbeat against the stars. "Pain means we're still alive," she murmured. "Then the galaxy will never die." And somewhere, in the quiet between worlds, a single voice seemed to echo through the stars, carried on every transmission, every frequency, every living soul that still remembered the man who taught them how to rise again. "Keep fighting. You're not done yet." The war was over, but peace didn't arrive with trumpets or banners. It came quietly, like a breath after years spent drowning. The Keth Dominion was gone, their ships shattered, their homeworld reduced to a scar of drifting stone. Yet even in victory, the stars felt heavier. The cost of humanity's survival weighed on every heart that had watched the light of the Aurora vanish into the void. Across the galaxy, people whispered one name, Aaron Kane. The human who had laughed through broken bones, who had turned mercy into a weapon, who had shown the universe that pain could forge strength instead of fear. They said his sacrifice lit up the dark between stars, that his voice could still be heard in the hum of the engines that carried the living home. Earth rebuilt once more, but this time it wasn't alone. In orbit hung the Unity Ring, a colossal station constructed from the remains of Terran and Vekari warships fused together. Their metals melted in the same fires that had once divided them. From there, the Galactic Alliance governed, a council not of species but of survivors. The Queen of the Vekari presided as High Chancellor, her crown replaced with a simple band of silver. Her first decree was simple. "No world shall forget the day we bled together." The Queen had changed since the war. Her speech was slower, her eyes softer, and though she ruled with grace, Those who knew her could sense a sorrow she carried silently. In her private quarters, she kept one relic from the battlefield. A fragment of armor, scorched black and engraved with the Terran insignia. On quiet nights, she would rest her hand upon it and whisper, "Still fighting, Aaron?" Lieutenant Mira Hayes, the last survivor of Kane's final mission, became something of a ghost herself. She refused promotion, refused medals, refused even to retire. She spent her years traveling from world to world, visiting colonies that had been saved by the Alliance, speaking to soldiers and settlers alike. When asked why she did it, she always gave the same answer: because he would have. Her presence inspired people. Children who had never known war learned her name before they could name the stars. Some nights, when she camped beneath alien skies, she swore she could hear Kane's voice in the static of her comms, calm and unbreakable as always. "Keep going. You're not done yet." But the galaxy wasn't done with humanity either. In the decades that followed, new threats arose, not wars but questions. The Keth had been powerful, but their technology was ancient, far older than any known race. Researchers studying the wreckage discovered symbols that didn't belong to the Keth or any known civilization. Some believed the Dominion had been servants, not rulers. Others whispered of something deeper, something waiting in the void. The Alliance kept its focus on rebuilding, but the mystery hung like a shadow beneath the stars. Humanity, once feared for its aggression, was now looked to for guidance. Their resilience had become legend, their soldiers symbols of endurance. Yet every legend cast its own shadow, and Kane's story became the galaxy's greatest paradox. Was his defiance a miracle of strength, or a warning of what happened when humans refused to stop fighting? To preserve his memory, the Alliance built the Hall of Echoes, a massive monument floating at the edge of Sol's orbit. Inside it lay the last recovered fragments of the Aurora, encased in crystal, surrounded by holographic projections of those who had fought beside him. Visitors from every species came to stand before the chamber, to hear the recordings of his final speech replayed endlessly through the hall. "You think pain will stop us? You think fear will bend us? Pain is where we start." The words carried through the generations like a pulse in the bones of the galaxy. Even young cadets from distant worlds who had never met a human could recite those lines by heart. The Queen herself came once each year, silent and veiled, leaving behind a single feather of light, a Vekari symbol of eternal guardianship. And then, one day, something extraordinary happened. A deep space mining crew, searching through the debris field of Helios Reach, detected a faint energy signal, one impossible to explain. The source came from the shattered remains of the Keth flagship Vorkal. At first, they assumed it was a malfunction. But when the scientists tuned in, they heard it. A faint, rhythmic pulse. 2 beats, then 1. Over and over. It wasn't a distress signal. It was a heartbeat. The Alliance dispatched a small research vessel under Mira Hayes' command. As she approached the debris field, her sensors confirmed the impossible. The energy signature was organic, human-adjacent, fused with alien biometal. The closer she got, the stronger the signal became. Her crew grew nervous. "It can't be him," one whispered. "It's been decades." Mira didn't answer. She just stared into the dark, eyes glistening. "You'd be surprised what humans can survive," she murmured. They found it buried deep in the wreckage. A cryostasis chamber unlike any known design. Half human, half Vekari, powered by an energy core of unknown origin. Inside it lay a figure suspended in blue light, his chest faintly glowing, his hair streaked with silver. The readouts confirmed what her heart already knew. It was Aaron Kane. His body was alive, his vitals faint but steady. The chamber systems were maintaining him, healing him slowly, cell by cell. No one understood how it was possible. Some theorized the blast from the Aurora's core had fused with Vekari energy, preserving him in a kind of living stasis. Others believed something else entirely, that the universe simply refused to let him die. Mira stood before the chamber, her reflection overlapping with his. "You stubborn bastard," she whispered. "You really did it." When the Queen received the news, she wept. For the first time in years, her palace lights dimmed. and her people saw their monarch smile through tears. The Alliance voted unanimously to transport the chamber to the Unity Ring, where scientists and healers from across the galaxy gathered to study the miracle. They didn't awaken him immediately. They didn't dare. Some feared what would happen if they did. Would he still be the man who saved them, or something new, something beyond human? For months, the chamber remained sealed, its faint heartbeat echoing through the station's halls like the ticking of destiny. On the day of the first dawn of the new year, the Queen visited the chamber alone. She placed her hand against the glass and whispered softly, "The galaxy is at peace, Aaron. You did it. You can rest now." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the glow beneath the glass pulsed once, twice, stronger than before. The Queen gasped. Around her, the instruments flared to life. The monitors screamed with rising energy. And from within the light, a shadow stirred. Slowly, the figure's eyes opened, glowing faint blue. The glass dissolved into mist, and Aaron Kane took a breath. A deep, ragged human breath. The Queen fell to her knees, overwhelmed. He looked down at her, confusion giving way to recognition. "Still fighting?" he rasped, his voice cracked but real. She smiled through her tears. "Always." He reached out a trembling hand and touched her shoulder. "Then so am I." The lights of the Unity Ring flared across the sky that night, visible even from the surface of Earth. Billions watched as a single transmission echoed across every world. "Aaron Kane lives." The galaxy erupted in celebration. Some called it resurrection, others called it destiny, but everyone knew one truth. Humanity had given the stars their greatest story, and the stars had given humanity its hero back. Kane would never again command fleets or lead wars. He spent his remaining years teaching, guiding, reminding new generations of what peace truly meant. "It's not the absence of pain," he would tell them, standing before classrooms filled with children of every species. "It's learning to stand even when it hurts." When he finally passed away, many decades later, his body was returned to space. His coffin, half metal, half crystal, was set adrift beyond the reach of any world, carried by the light of the suns he'd saved. And as his vessel disappeared into the eternal night, the galaxy remembered his words, carried now by 1,000 voices across the comms of every ship that sailed the void. "We break, we bleed, we fall, but we always rise. That's what makes us human." Outro. Thank you for watching this HFY sci-fi story of courage, sacrifice, and the spirit of humanity. If Aaron Kane's journey moved you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more cinematic tales of defiance, compassion, and the strength that makes humanity shine among the stars.